Scammers are stealing hundreds of millions of pounds every year. They bombard us with fraudulent texts, emails and calls. And what's more, their tactics are getting increasingly sinister. To keep across the latest scams, sign up to our free Scam Alert service to help you stay ahead of the latest scams and protect yourself. Go to which.co.uk/scamalert-newsletter. That's which.co.uk/scamalert-newsletter. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Which Shorts podcast. I'm Rob Lilly-Jones. Now, when was the last time you took a trip to the supermarket or did an online grocery shop? Well, did you notice anything different about some of your favourite items? If you've noticed that your favourite foods are decreasing in size or quality, but not price, you're not alone. This week, we're looking at shrinkflation, skimpflation, and inflating prices. To read us this article, originally written by Ellie Simmons, I'll hand you over to the host of the Which Money podcast, Lucia Ariano.
As you'll be well aware after the last couple of years, inflation means you get less for your money. Usually it means your money won't stretch as far, but sometimes it's more literal. This won't come as a surprise to any shoppers who have picked up a block of butter, packet of biscuits or box of tea bags in the supermarket and thought they seemed smaller. Known as shrinkflation, it's a way food and drink manufacturers can cut costs without increasing the shelf price as much. In some instances, we've seen the price go down, but not by as much as the size. So you could be forgiven for thinking it's a real price cut. But it's not only the size of groceries that's shrinking. There's another way manufacturers are quietly cutting costs, and that's by downgrading ingredients. If you've felt your ready meal doesn't taste quite like it used to, thought your sausages weren't as meaty, or suspected there's less avocado in your guacamole, it might be a case of skimpflation. And with inflation recently hitting its highest levels in 40 years, it's no wonder this is being noticed by significant numbers of shoppers. Indeed, our survey of 1,568 members of the public in October 2023 reveals that more than 3/4 had noticed shrinkflation in the previous 12 months, and more than a third had spotted skimpflation. We asked eagle-eyed shoppers to send us their examples of shrinking products or groceries with less of the key ingredients, and we've been inundated. First up is Listerine, which is bound to leave a bad taste in your mouth after its Fresh Burst mouthwash shrunk from 600 millilitres to 500 ml. At Tesco, it went up in price by 52p, meaning shoppers were paying 21% more for 17% less. When you work it out per 100 ml, that's a price increase of a staggering 46%. Then there's PG Tips, which might make customers' blood boil if they realised they were getting 22% less tea for a 27% higher price. Its boxes of tasty decaf pyramid tea bags went from containing 180 bags to just 140 at a number of supermarkets. Many stores also dropped the price, though not always proportionately. But at Ocado, the price actually rose from £4 to £5.09, despite the size reduction. That's a 64% cost increase per tea bag. As for examples of skimpflation, shoppers would be right to think they're getting less banger for their buck with Tesco's finest sausages, which have reduced from 97% pork to 90%, although they were still a Which Best Buy in our April 2023 taste test. Perhaps most blatant of all is the reformulation of Sainsbury's clotted cream rice pudding, in which the clotted cream has actually been replaced with whipping cream, meaning no clotted cream is used in the pudding at all. The product packaging was renamed, but it was still called clotted cream rice pudding online until we pointed it out at Sainsbury's. These changes have all come at a time when food inflation has soared. According to the Which Supermarket Food Inflation Tracker, year-on-year price rises peaked last April at 17%. But some types of food and drink have seen even higher inflation. Our research showed butters and spreads cost 30% more at the end of 2022 than at the same point in 2021. So it comes as little surprise that many of the shrinkflation and skimpflation examples readers told us about were on products with a high dairy content. Meat is also an ingredient that seems to be ripe for reduction, featuring in many of the examples we found. Its peak inflation level was 15% last May. Many manufacturers say these changes reflect the cost they face and sometimes even claim that shoppers prefer the changes. Some tweaks purportedly improve the flavour or healthiness of the product. They also pointed out that access to affordable food is key for customers, an issue which has campaigned on for many months now, though we certainly haven't advocated for shrinkflation. When we asked shoppers for their views on shrinkflation, 45% said they would prefer product sizes to stay the same and prices to increase. Meanwhile, 3/4 said shrinkflation was not a transparent practice, and a similar proportion said it was not helpful. While you might think that shrinking products and downgrading their key ingredients is a sneaky tactic on the manufacturer's part, there's no rules against it as long as the packaging is labelled with the correct size, weight and ingredients. The issue is that there's no requirement to explicitly tell shoppers when there's been a change, and many don't notice it immediately, if at all. It can also cause tension between the manufacturers that make the products and the retailers that sell them. It's the manufacturer that's responsible for changing the size or ingredients of groceries, but the retailer which ultimately sets the price the shopper pays. In France, this came to a head last year when supermarket chain Carrefour put labels on its shelves warning shoppers that certain groceries had shrunk in size. It's an interesting idea. When we asked shoppers who they thought should be responsible for flagging changes to them, more than half said it should be supermarkets and a third said manufacturers. Just 1 in 10 thought customers themselves should be responsible for noticing. The manufacturers we spoke to all emphasised that production costs such as raw materials, transport and packaging had risen and that pricing was set by retailers. A spokesperson for Arla, which makes Lurpak, said average prices had reduced proportionately. Arla said, "Our research showed that new pack sizes and price points were the most appealing to a greater proportion of shoppers." PG Tips manufacturer Lipton Teas said the average price of a PG Tips decaf tea bag fell 10% between January 2021 and January 2022. Waitrose said our new curry recipes performed better than the previous range in benchmarking tests. We've kept the same prices since this change, and we continue to use industry-leading higher welfare chicken from British farms across our entire ready meals range.
Thank you to Lucia and to Ellie Simmons too for her piece, which was originally published in the February issue of Which magazine. And remember, you can find more articles you'll find useful every day on everything from money and technology to home and garden advice by signing up to one of our many free email newsletters. And you can do that at which.co.uk/newsletters. We'll be back next week for another episode of Which Shorts, and thanks for listening. Which Shorts was produced by me, Rob Lily Jones, while the exec producer was Grace Farrell.
Hi, Lucia here, host of the Which Money podcast. Join us each week as we bring you the best experts and top advice to help you make the most of your money. From property prices to budgeting, investment platforms to pensions, we'll be here to keep you informed. Here's a taste of what you can expect.
If you had invested £100 in the fund 3 years ago, you'd have just £61 today.
Gosh.
Is it worth trusting a website that you don't know to save that 10p, that 20p?
The good news is it does look like we're hovering around the top of the interest rate hike cycle.
If I asked you what you earned a year, you'd be absolutely horrified because we're told we should not talk about money.
Make sure to join us for new episodes every Friday, and I'll see you then.